Hello friends and welcome to the International Fab Talks. Fab Talks is all about learning and empowering people across the globe. Today we've been joined by one of the best people who has been contributing a lot to the society, and you'll get to know as to what contribution Sir is making. Let's keep that a secret for 2-3 minutes, and then we'll come back with Sir, a power-packed session for all the parents and for others too, to make you aware that yes, such things have to be shared on the International Fab Talks to create awareness and to bring out the beauty of life, to have an inclusive society, to respect children, to respect differences across the world, to respect differences within our own family too. So I'd like to invite our special celebrity today. He is Mr. Karthik Rao, joining us from Chennai. And Sir has been inspiring many people in his long span in his career, that is 20 plus years. First, we'll welcome Sir and then go ahead with his profile. Hello, Sir, and welcome to the session.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the warm welcome and looking forward for the discussion.
Thank you, Sir. And before we start off, I'd like to thank you very much for accepting the invitation to the International Fab Talks. Thank you so much. When we connect with professionals and get to know about what profession they are into and how their profession could benefit the people across the globe, that is the real cause and the real essence of Fab Talks. That's what I'd like to say. Wanting people to share their expertise such that others could reach out and take the benefits and bond and save their families, save their loved ones, and of course, protect the universe. I'd like to share the profile of our special celebrity. As I earlier mentioned, he's been treating and taking care of more than 6,000 children. And Sir has 20 plus years of experience. He's completed his bachelor's in physiotherapy. He's a bachelor of physiotherapy, diploma in developmental therapy, aquatic therapist as well. And Sir has been certified in sensory integration from USA in 2006. Apart from that, Sir wants to empower the parents of children with special needs. So this session is mainly focused for those parents who have children with special needs, to enable them to understand the pros and cons and how to take that forward and how to protect their children and how to live a beautiful life with those beautiful gifts given by God. And Sir is also specializing in something more very important, a stroke rehab. We'll get to know all of this. I'm really interested to know all of this because in our families or around us, we've seen many people, who have children with special needs, or a person or a family member who has had a stroke and how to deal with them and much more. It would be a very empowering and a learning session for all of us. Hello, Sir, and welcome to the session.
Hi.
I hand over the session
to you,
sir. Yes, Sir. I hand over the session to you, and wanting to know more, to share everything here, that we all should, when the session ends, we all should have taken something very positive and learn a lot and get connected with Sir if you need of any Sir's services. Over to you, Sir.
Yeah, thank you very much for inviting me for the program as well. And as we had been discussing, I wanted this discussion to be of benefit to the parents of children with special needs. And many times we see that the parents are fighting a lone battle against all odds because they're not sure why they have a child with special needs, why and what to do with them, and whom to believe, what strategy to use, which therapy to trust, and those kind of, there are a lot of questions that are in the mind of parents of children with special needs. Even if I remember one particular day when my son was almost like 6 months old, and a mosquito bit him, and it was on his arm, and I just hit it, and I could see blood coming out of the mosquito, not from my son. But that kind of shook me. It was like my son's blood. And that was something which made me realize that parenting is a tough job, and it's like you are so involved with your loved ones that at times of distress, you more than the child, it is the parent who suffers, and that's what made me to look at. And fortunately, I'm in a field where we can help the parents of children with special needs. Because when I'm talking about special needs, we are talking about children with physical disability like cerebral palsy or muscular dystrophy, It could also be for children with autism or hyperactivity or learning disabilities or intellectual disabilities. Earlier, we used to call it as mental retardation. Now we call it as intellectual disability. So these are some conditions where we see that the parent needs help, and more often than not, they reach out to different people and they get all kinds of advice. Even a layman, a person who gives delivers a newspaper, or a person whom you see in the park, or the playground, that will give you an advice: do this, do that, and it's very and sometimes it becomes embarrassing as well. So overall, the objective of this discussion is to guide or give the parents a small gist of what we can look into, how we should approach this issue. And I'm sure, like within a 45-minute talk, we are not going to cover everything. So I'll be happy if there are at least three key takeaways from this discussion. I will be very happy that the session is a successful one.
Yes, it will, sir,
So,
definitely. So I just have one question in mind before we go forward, and you
sure.
just excuse me with the one question. The neurodivergent community, do they also come under this
Yes,
session? Are they all like
yes,
autism and learning disability, hyperactivity disorder, all of that?
yes, all of them.
They're all called as they come under this umbrella called as the neurodivergent community. Am I right?
Yes, 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 yes. That's the new term that is being used.
Yes, yes, yes. Over to you. Thank you for answering my question.
Right? Yeah, so because earlier when we started with that, all of this started in India with something called PWD Act, uh, which is Person with Disabilities Act. It's an act which was done by the government, and under which we identified there are some conditions which will be called as a disabled. The person will be called as a disabled person, because that in that particular instance we also uh, the person also has some benefits coming from the government. For some example, some government schemes, some concessions for exams, some concessions for travel, some monthly pension. So all those things would be part of that. So it started with that. So Person with Disabilities Act, which was again revised. And now we have included, initially it was just 7, now it has been expanded to 21. So in India, we talk more about disability and children with special needs, whereas the neurodivergent is the same as the children with special needs, just a more inclusive terminology, I would say, so that we understand that everyone is different and that difference should be not be considered as something a disability. It's more of a unique way of dealing with things. Yeah. So I would, as part of this discussion, I would like to share my screen as well. So I guess I have your permission for that. Can I go ahead?
Yes, please, sir.
So today I'm going to discuss about more of parenting and some tips and strategies that can be looked at. And I don't want to be prescriptive in the sense like every child is unique. So I'll be discussing more about ideas and concepts rather than discussing about your child should be doing this or doing that. And this is more for the parents than for the child, obviously. So the first thing that I would like to discuss is about activities, because we always see that children are all naturally engaged in a lot of activities, and we too many times we find a child with special need does not know how to engage himself or herself meaningfully. So we could see that a child with autism might be maybe fiddling with his fingers or looking for the corner of the eyes, or might be playing with something like more of a routine-based game, like pouring something, collecting it back, again pouring, or they may just align a few. Uh, I see a lot of children also doing that. If they have two sketch pens of the same color, they just keep that in their hand, and they just keep it all the time, doing nothing with that. So essentially, they many times I find that they don't know how to play, uh, and which is something which is supposed to be an innate ability of any child to be able to play with and explore. So these are two things that I would like to uh, discuss about. So activities are something that what occupies most of the time. And when I talk about activities, these activities, if I broadly classify according to the age, I would say a child who is less than 3, we focus more on play. A child who is like 3 to maybe even up to 12, it's going to be play and self-care and maybe to some extent academics. And then a child who's like more than 12, then probably we look at more of on, uh, vocational skills. We're looking at uh, their ability to do more of academic work, being independent in self-care and all of that. So where the play comes, play secondary. So all of this put together, I would like to call them as activities. And it is important that children need to be engaged in meaningful activities because every time we work with them, we play with them, we do something with them, they learn something. There's always something or the other to learn from everything that we do. Even in this particular discussion that we are having, I'm learning what kind of examples I should be giving to the audience when they are not right in front of me, right? So it's important that everything is a learning point, and children have the entire world to understand, right? They just maybe 2 years old or maybe 5 years old. They have the entire life ahead of them, and so they need to understand a lot of things. So activities essentially should uh, be. So what is the difference between an activity and exercise? That would be the first thing that I would like to talk about, because too many times we see a child being asked to do some exercises. I know somebody asked a child because the child. I know somebody asked the child to do sit-ups 10 times or do some um, exercises, some push-ups, some those kind of things, which are totally meaningless to the child, right? So activity has to be something which is meaningful for a child. It's not just enough that it is meaningful for the adult. It has to be meaningful for the child. And when I say meaningful, what I mean by that is it has to be interactive. I do something, and any activity is my action on the world. I'm doing something on the world, and something is changing, something is moving. I'm throwing a ball at a target, then the it hits the target, right? So there is a sound that I get. So it's a feedback. There is a reaction. Okay, so in every activity should have a feedback, should have a completion. It should have something that tells me that what I have done is acting on the world. What I have done, I'm making some change in the world. What I'm doing is I get some kind of a feedback. Now, without that, if I do push-ups, if I do jumping on a trampoline, if I just do, let's say, sit-to-stand exercises or things like that, I don't get anything from that. In fact, many times we see children with special needs that, especially children with autism, they don't know how to wave bye-bye, like with the hand, but they'll always give high five. Okay. Now, high five is very specific because it gives a feedback to them that you are touching. If the child is cognitively sound, they'll also make a sound, but at least they'll touch. Okay. And that touch is it gives the completion. It gives the feedback. Whereas a bye bye doesn't give a feedback. I don't know how much I have to wave my hand and what it means because it's something I don't really understand, right? So an activity should be something like that, which gives a very clear feedback to the child, and at the same time, it involves different parts of the brain because whenever I gave you the example of bye bye versus high five, and high five involves touch, it involves sound, right? And it involves a hand movement, and it precisely tells you how much you have to move, when you should stop moving, right? All this become part of learning, and that is something which may not be possible with a bye bye waving bye bye, right? So how many times you have to wave, you don't know, and that is something that you will understand only as you grow up, and maybe you do once or twice, or you'll just keep waving somebody for long till they take a cut on the road. So turn in the road. So all of this we learn more with experience. So when we look into activity, we have different benefits coming up from activity because each activity paves the way for something else. Because we can look at, as a general rule, we can look at all these benefits that I've listed, the physical growth and the strength and hand skills as well. I'm just not going to read all of that. But the idea here is that every skill, every activity paves the way for another level of activity. For example, if I have to understand, I should understand what is day and night. That's the first step before I can understand what is time, what is an hour, what is a minute, right? So now understanding that is important. Now, then how do I relate to time? Is I should know what can I do in the day, what can I do in the night. Okay, so that is experience. Now that understanding relates to something like uh, time, understanding time concept. Then we have all the math and calculation related to time. How many hours difference? How long will this take? And when should you plan it? And how early should you start from home if you have to reach an office which is 10 kilometers away? So all these things are, as we grow older, as we understand that more and more, then we refine it as and when we do that. So every activity, everything that we do has a bearing on, it helps, enriches our experience, and at the same time, it ensures that it is not, nothing is in isolation. It always is part of something, it's part of a bigger uh, plan. It's part of a bigger thing that we do later in life. So when I talk to parents, I always tell them that an activity can be expanded like this, which is A stands for age and ability appropriate. Many times we see that children, because children have may not have the right amount of intelligence. For example, an 8-year-old child with intellectual disability would be having an IQ which is very less, so it's almost like a 3-year-old, right? Now, a 3-year-old playing with maybe a rattle or maybe a something which is shaking and things like that, it looks good. But an 8-year-old old doing the same thing, it's not age appropriate, right? So now we have to marry that age and ability, because now we understand the child's cognitive levels may not be according to an 8-year-old, and so if he's interested in something which is shaking and which makes sounds, can I make a ball which makes sound rather than a rattle which makes sound, right? So that is important, because the child is getting the feedback that he wants. At the same time, child also learns that because ball is more dynamic, it can move around, it can roll around. So you go, run, chase it, stop it, catch it, throw it. So you do a lot more things with the ball compared to a racket, right? So marrying the age and ability is very important in any activity. So the activity has to be age appropriate. It has to be ability appropriate. Now, when I say ability appropriate, it also means that I cannot, if the child is not ready for catching and throwing, I cannot use catching and throwing as an activity. Then maybe rolling the ball or kicking the ball would be a simpler way of interacting with the ball, which is ability appropriate. Right? So understanding that dynamicity is very important, and so that the child is also engaged, the child likes what he is doing, so he is able to pay more attention for a longer period of time because he likes it, and at the same time he is learning something out of it. The second thing that I talk about is challenge. Challenge is everything that we do is a challenge. For example, this webinar discussion is a challenge. Now, I'm sure, like, if I am the host for this event, I may not do it as good as you. Okay, and so you have done some X number of interviews, and you know probably the way when you started, and now we have come a long way in the way you're introducing the audience, and the way you probably you showed me some signs as well. All those things, it comes over a period of time. Now, a challenge, if it is, now we look at challenge as a spectrum, and in this spectrum, if the challenge is too easy, it is boring. I do something, I know I'm going to win. For example, I'm watching a match between India and Sri Lanka, watching playing cricket. 9 times out of 10 or 99 times out of 100, at this present state of mind, as state of affairs, I would say that India would win the match. So I'm not very much interested in watching the match because it's going to be too easy. The results are predictable. And unless it's a very important occasion, I'm not going to take a day off from my work and watch that match. And whereas the other way around, if it is too easy, it is boring. So no attention. If it is too difficult, I know I'm going to fail. It's going to be frustrating. I don't know how to do it. I've not cracked the formula yet. So I'll not be able to do it. So right at the beginning, I know I cannot do it. So I'm not going to give the necessary amount of push or enthusiasm or even the perseverance to that matter to achieve it. So too easy. So it's kind of spectrum. On one end, it's too easy. On one end, it's too hard. Both these ends are not ideal for a child because it's either boring or it's too difficult. Now, when we talk about challenge, so we have to understand that it should be somewhere in the middle. And in the course of the talk, I'll be discussing how we can arrive at that. The third thing I'm talking about is task, task based, because what is a task? So task can be something which has a very defined end, right? Now this webinar we're taking has an end, right? It could be half an hour, 45 minutes, and then it ends. Or I'm cooking, then I know when it gets over. I'm traveling, I know when it's going to get over, right? So all of this will have an impact on it. You can just take a quick break. Just a minute. So the next thing is task, T for task. And you can, so what is a task? That's something that we need to understand. And task is something which has a very clear end. So it could be cooking, and it could be traveling, it could be even this webinar, it could be writing, it could be watching a movie. So anything that I do, I always know when it is going to get over. There is an end attached to it. And understanding this task is very important. If I don't have an end, there is no completion. And then when there is no completion, I would not stick on to the task till it gets over. So I would probably do it as long as it is interesting for me, and then at the moment I feel that it's getting boring for me, then I will stop doing it. So there's no completion attached with that. And completion is very important because only when we complete a task, it gives us a confidence that I have done something. It gives me a feedback that I've done something, I'm good at something, and that confidence I carry to something else, some other activity. And for a child who doesn't have this understanding, I always tell the parent that the child should know when the task ends even before it starts. Because we are doing everything that we know when it's going to get over. We know what time we have to be in the office. We know what time we have to come back at home, or we know all of this. Anything that we do, even when we go for a vacation, we book the return tickets, right? So everything is planned, everything is, we are very clear with the task completion. And whereas what is happening with the child? So a simple analogy for that would be like I'm asking a child to go for a 100-meter race, but I'm not showing the finish line. And without understanding where the finish line is, how do I expect the child to last the distance? Okay, some children may cross it and keep running, some children may not even start, some children may stop midway. So all those kind of things would happen. And being innovative is important because it's so easy to get bored with all the activities, whatever you do on a day-to-day basis. We do tasks, a lot of these tasks where we understand a long-term perspective of why we have to do. Sometimes the job that we do could be very boring, but we know that we have to complete the project. It's important for our salary, it is important for our increment or appraisal. So we have some long-term vision, but children don't have that. So it's important for them to have the variety. So innovation, variety go together, but the difference here is that innovation comes from how we present it. We cannot buy a new toy every day, but we can use the same toy in different ways, right? So, for example, we have so many ball games, right? We have table tennis, we have football, cricket, volleyball, we have basketball. So we have so many games, billiards, right? So it's just a ball. It's the dynamic thing, but we use it in so many different ways, right? So that's where the innovation comes, and that's where it makes it interesting for the child as well. So innovation makes it new, keeps it new, and brings that novelty in any task. And then we talk about variety. Because again, anything that I do continuously over a period of time, it gets boring, and I master it. Essentially, if I do something over and over again, I know how to do it, I master it. And then, as I mentioned when I was talking about challenge, it goes to one end of the spectrum. Initially, it would have been interesting, it would have been in the middle. We call it as just right challenge. But over a period of time, I know how to do it. So there's nothing interesting about it. There's nothing new I'm learning from it. And so it becomes easy. And then I lose my interest. So the variety keeps the challenge fresh. And also it gives and each variety gives a variety, a different kind of learning for me, different kind of experience for me. And then keeping the task interesting is important. But what is it that makes the task interesting? Is you look at a variety of ways. That would be one way of looking at it. But I would essentially look at a feedback the child is getting. The child should know whether he's doing it right or not. If that the child is not able to understand that, then the child will not find it interesting. For example, I see a ball catching and throwing is a very boring activity, or a pegboard is a very boring activity. So if I'm playing with you, for example, I'm throwing a ball to you, you're throwing it back to me, and then I throw it back to you, right? So it's nothing interesting out there, right? And I'm not making a change in the world. That's what I started with, right? But if there is a target throw, there is a, let's say like bowling pins, we have those bowling pins, and I roll the ball, and the pins fall off, right? So that is a feedback. Now I'm doing something. So that feedback is important. That is what makes the task interesting. So what is it that the child is doing it? And always it should be time bound. When I say time bound, is not in the strictest sense. The time bound is we should know when the task gets over. That's very important. Sometimes what we do is when the child is not doing it right. For example, we are giving a math sum to the child and asking the child to, let's say 2 plus 3, what is that? And the child gives the wrong answer. And then you correct the child, and then you give another sum, and then you correct it, another sum, then correct it, right? So or we find that the child does not know a particular thing, and you're trying different ways of doing it. Somewhere down the line, we need to be clear what is the uh, completion for that particular task and how to convey this to the child. That's also very important. We'll discuss more about that. And finally, having to follow all of that, we need to be very clear as therapists, as parents, that this is what I want. I know there will be times when the child has a meltdown, is maybe aggressive, or we are stressed out. There may be something happening in the office, in the workplace, and for all of that to happen, we need to be very clear what is important. So being yourself and being because the child is shouting, we need to be calm. The child is screaming, we have to be calm. That's very important. And that understanding is also important because if I am not sure about what I'm doing, I cannot do the other parts of this section. Like I'm talking about activity, so nothing else will happen. So that is also something that I would like to share here. Is that clear? You have any questions on some of this, or you want me to give
Yes,
some
yes, sir.
clarification?
Yes, sir. What in case if the parents are unable to enable their children to either take up some activity, appropriate activity, and there are parents who cannot identify actually all of this. There's a lot of pressure on parents to make their children, to focus on the right activity. Maybe as you said, it's not what the parents want; it's what the child has to be interested in.
Yeah.
So in this way, how do we educate the parents? How do you have a special session for parents to educate them and make them understand, or do they have to directly connect with you to learn more, like have to one-to-one session with you? Is it something like that too we could have?
Yeah. So most of them, what we do in the therapy is that we always have the parents with us. Okay. So it's always a transparent session. So whatever we do or work with the child, the parent is always aware of it. And uh, my current job is more of a senior management, so I don't see patient children myself. Uh, but what I used to do is I used to have sessions before the COVID, I would ask the parents to come with a notebook, and the first I just asked them to put it into two parts. The first part is what they see writing. For example, I'm playing catch and throw. I'm making the child sit on a swing, and maybe I'm just pushing it, asking the child to stop, and things like that. So they just note down that what the activity was done. But more than what meets the eye, I want the parent to understand like how am I interacting with the child, why I chose this activity, and what am I doing when the child is not cooperating, and when I see that the child is getting frustrated, how do I simplify the task? Now, I don't change the task, I just simplify it. Okay, so that I can find out that what is the right challenge for the child. Because if the child is frustrating, then child is not going to pay attention to it, and then his sitting tolerances, learning, everything is going to get affected. So, for example, would be like if I have a four-piece puzzle, you know, jigsaw puzzle.
Yes, sir.
If you have four pieces together, it gives you a single image, right? Now, if I want to start that with some children, some child, and if I find the child is not able to do that, then I would fix three pieces and just give the fourth piece. You have to fix only one piece. So I just make it simple because for that particular child, that itself could be the right challenge. And once the child is able to do one piece well, then I go to the two pieces. Like I fix two, you fix two, right? So that's how you keep moving. And I'll ask the parent to put into two parts. First part is what you see. Second part is what the strategies I'm using. Because when I look into the strategies, what is happening is the strategy that I'm using for teaching play skills be helpful for teaching the child academic skills or to make the child do some speech related activities, because what we're trying to do is we are not exactly working only at the skill level, we're working at the concept level. So that is important, and so that may not be visible to the parents. So I explain to them that this is what is happening, this is why I've done this, and you find that he was not able to do when I presented it this way. Now I've changed it. Now you can see he's able to do now, right? So all these things happens live with their children, and that's what helps the child to the parent to understand how to work with it. The other part of it is we also have online sessions during COVID. Even now we do that. So what we do is now many children with autism do not understand this online concept, right? So or they may not cooperate for it. They may not sit there and listen to the session. So what we do is instead of working with the child, we work with the parent. So we tell them that you do these activities, take a video of these activities, and we will connect with you on Zoom. You show those videos and to save space on the mobile. I always ask them to upload this in Google Photos and share the link, right? So that the videos also stay with the parent, right? And it cannot be misused. So then those videos, we put it on Zoom, we go through those videos, then tell the parent that you have done this, you have probably kept it a little too far, or it was instead of choosing this particular material, you could have chosen a smaller one. So all those kind of things, right? Because if I want to teach a child how to catch a ball, um, I may choose. I will most likely start with uh, bubble popping, okay? Because it's a moving object and he has to look at and pop it and it goes slowly. So it gives time for the child to react. But the ball thrown, it would be too fast to the child. So I'll start with a bubble, then go for a balloon, then go for a soft ball, which is like almost a bigger one, which is easier to catch because soft balls you can hold it better. And then I gradually reduce the size of the ball. So all those kind of changes in the material now. So that will influence the outcome. That influences the challenge. That makes it interesting. So everywhere you will find that as part of the session, the parent learns all of it. So the other advantage that I saw during this COVID time was that when we had these online sessions, and because there were so many videos that were coming up, we found that we had videos of when the child at the beginning of the session, maybe after 1 month, 2 months, we had a follow up of that, and we had all the videos now. So we were able to see the changes that were happening because now it's an evidence in itself, and you could see that the child and 90% of the work is done by the parent because if the therapist is on the other side, we not even interact with the child. So that sense, we could see that was true parent empowerment. Right? We could see the changes in the child. We could see the changes in the parent as well, and they were more confident. They knew exactly what needs to be done, how to get the child to focus on an activity. Right?
Yeah, thank you, sir, for explaining that and giving us a lot of clarity. Much appreciated.
Thank you. So let me just move on. So we would have seen this skill will matrix, which is very largely used in management concepts and for employees. I adapted this to pediatric therapy for children with special needs as well. So that's something that I want to discuss here as part of this parent empowerment program. So we have skill and will as a matrix. So we have low skill and high skill. The skill is on the x-axis and the high will and low will in the y-axis. So essentially two things, right? Skill is the child's competency and will is the child's willingness to learn or motivation or attitude you can talk about. So if I cross that, we have four options, which is a low skill and a high will, high skill and a high will, a low skill and a low will, and high skill and a low will. So we will look into each of these quadrant here so that we understand how we can approach the child based on this. Now, let's go to the first one, which is a low skill and a high will child, right? The child has maybe an intellectual disability, okay? So his skill levels are low, but he is very cooperative. He wants to learn, okay? We have seen many times that a child wants to be with peers, he wants to be with other children, but he does not know what to say. Okay, so that's a communication gap and or communication delay. The child is not able to speak. So in that case, so it's a child who is eager to learn, who is eager to participate, but the child needs more support. Right. So that's what the child is a slow learner. He may need more customized instructions, more customized materials. So these are things that we have to do it. So uh, and I always believe that if I use one, two, there are a few keywords that is important. One of the keyword would be customization. So any learning has to be customized according to the individual because every child is unique. And some children would benefit from a board game. Some children have to do a totally experiential way of learning. Or it could be some children learn from textbooks. Some children have to go out and see what is the leases and things like that. So it has to be customized. So that's the low skill and high will quadrant. The second quadrant is the high skill and high will. So in this, the child is intelligent. Many times we associate that a child with autism who is not able to speak has a low intelligence. But on the contrary, we find that they are very intelligent and they are not stimulated enough. Okay, the child is a quick learner, and for them, it's important on two fronts. We have to challenge the child because if we give the same thing again, if you go back to the previous slide, the challenge, if it's too easy, it's going to be boring. So they will not do mundane things. They have to be challenged. They have to do things which are more interesting and more challenging. All of us do that because I remember I've seen everybody, in fact, as when we were young, we would go to the park and there would be a slide. So we'll climb up the steps and they would slide, let's say 5 times, 10 times, 20 times. Then there comes a point when we think that this is boring and let's start climbing in the reverse direction. Right? So that is where the child shows that innate ability to seek challenges. I want more challenge. I want more complex thing. And you're giving me something which is so boring, so mundane, and it's nothing new I'm learning from it. So, but the child is not communicating. So we assume the child is not cooperating. He has an attitude or a behavior issue. But the problem is the child is not challenged enough, and therefore the child finds it boring and doesn't want to do it. And the other thing that I always see is responsibility, because the more responsibility is given to the child, the more finer the individual develops. And this is something that I see many times the parent is very reluctant to give the responsibility to the children. Because I remember I saw a 12-year-old child, and this mother was saying that he doesn't even go to a nearby shop or he doesn't eat by himself. And so she's feeding him. She's feeding him when he's 12 years old, right? And I would say that you have not given him the responsibility. You're not give. So, and we can always start with something which is very simple, right? We can every day he has to lock the gate before going to sleep. He has to maybe do some bed making, maybe to help the mother with doing some household chores. So all those things would be part of getting that response. And just like charity begins at home, responsibility also begins at home. We cannot expect the school to do everything. So that is important that I would like to share here. So giving responsibility to the children is a way of developing uh, them into finer individuals, into more mature individuals, and that is something that the parents should do from a younger age. And I always tell them that you should talk good about your child in front of him to others. It's fine that you tell you did well, but the more you praise the child to others, but in the child's presence, makes a whole lot of difference. Because now the child understands that my mom didn't tell this to me, but she was noticing me. This all these things that I did, and then the third person, when they appreciate the child, it also adds more value and it's more meaningful. It's more what I say. It's much more attractive, much more engaging for the child. The third quadrant would be low skill and low will. Here, I would like to look at the child who has low intelligence and is not interested in learning, so not cooperative. And somewhere, so what is happening is uh, we have when the something is going above the head, the child is not engaged in it, right? So each one of us have our own bandwidth or a range, and something which is going beyond it, it doesn't help us. So it has to be like then we have to be very specific with the child, and I would say a routine is something that is a very basic way of teaching any child anything. Okay, what is a routine? A routine is a combination of fixed time, fixed place, fixed activity. These three things: time, place, and activity. So if I know I have to brush my teeth in the morning, so that's a fixed time, and fixed place, that's in the wash basin, okay, and fixed activity. So brushing is the activity. So now I have three things paired together, right? So I don't do brushing anywhere else. I don't do at any other time. Okay, if you want, we can make it morning and night. So that is the routine. So once I start doing it on a regular basis, the child automatically knows what he is supposed to do when he goes there or when to do it, right? So and children learn all the time with routines. I'm sure like we have seen 6-month-old babies or 8-month-old babies understanding when it comes to when it happens the evening, they would come out and wait for their father coming home. Or I remember in those days with my cousin who was very young, maybe around 8 months or 9 months, she exactly know when she would have that Sun TV news, because every news there will be an audio, right? The news had a background music, and she would just before that she would come and stand near the television, and she would know that, right? So it happened even in younger kids. So every child understands routine, and the routine is a sure short way of teaching a child what should be done. The child still may not understand why, but the child knows what to do. And that is something that we teach for children with poor intelligence. Like the child may not understand concepts like privacy, insult, and things like that. How do you teach a child that you shouldn't be without dress in front of people who come to the house? So it's very difficult to teach the concept of privacy or nudity. And what we teach is always when the moment the child is 2 years old, always take the child. If you go take the child for a to the bathroom to bathe him, or whenever you're changing his clothes, always make sure it happens behind closed doors. The child should never be without dress in the hall, in the living room. And always take the child, close the initially you would do that yourself, and as the child grows up you will say, let's lock the door and then undress yourself. Okay, so you make it as a habit. It's a routine. Now the child knows that I should only change my clothes in the bedroom, not in the living room. The child may not understand why, right? So routine makes sure that the child follows certain things, and because we are simplifying the task for them. And I would say that if a child who has a lesser intelligence or lesser IQ, I so we use umbrella. We use umbrella for rains. Sometimes we also use umbrella for the when it's too hot for the sun, right? So I would say don't give them this ifs and buts are very challenging for children. They may not understand because of the nature of the disability. So let's teach them. If it is hot sun, use a cap. If it is raining, use an umbrella. Very simple. Once you break it down, and you're direct with them, this is what it is, they will follow it to the T. It makes life easier for them as well. And the fourth quadrant would be high skill and low will. Now, this is a child who is intelligent, and many times it need not be only for a child with disability. It also applies to typically developing children. I generally don't use the word normal. I use the word typically developing and atypically developing children, or children with special needs. So I'm talking about typically developing children also have this issue where they may be intelligent, but they're not living up to their potential. Okay. And so it's important for them, for us to motivate the child, maybe even the previous quadrant, challenging them, giving responsibilities to some extent also helps them. And reinforcement, giving them uh, what they're looking for. Okay, every child has some needs or wants, right? So understanding that would be very critical. What is it they're looking at? And the child also needs to understand that he has to earn something. He cannot just get anything just like that. You do something, you have to earn. If you want something, you have to earn it. Okay, so those kind of things are very important, and finding the right challenge and motivating the child, spending more time with the child, explaining concept. Now this child needs more explanation why I should do this compared to the other child, right? So all these things are important to understand where the child is, what kind of uh, how do we interact with them, how do we help him to understand. The ultimate goal is the child has to lead an independent life, and that is what we are working towards.
Excellent, sir. That's really very nice. Thank you so much for sharing all of. Yes, sir. Thank you for sharing all of that. I just have one or two questions, sir, which I would like you to answer that. We found certain parents like saying that our child is not interested in any activity at all. And on certain days, yes, the child is very active, and the child follows our instructions, and that goes on. But on certain days, the child doesn't cooperate. What do we do on such days? How do I balance and manage things? In spite of showing a new activity or training them, trying to show, it doesn't happen at all. How do I manage and balance the situation at that moment?
Yes, so I would say that this is the basic problem or basic foundation of this is the child not having a trust on the adult. Okay, either in terms of when I feel that somebody is judging me all the time. For example, I say that the moment I say good morning to somebody, immediately a parent would tell the child, say good morning, right? And I would always tell them, give him some time to respond. Okay. And when I know that the child can do something, I shouldn't be asking the child the same mundane questions like, what did you have for breakfast? What did you do this? Or like all those kind of things, which the child knows that you're just you're up to something, right? So having a trust is important. So I would like to say that that would be the background of it, and then I'll also talk about what can be done. So the background is having a very what to say a trustful relationship. I'm not sure if that's the right word. Trustful is the word as such, but the parent has to be very clear what is okay, what is not okay, and the parent also has to be consistent with the way they are interacting with the child. So many times what I see is a child may do a behavior, a particular thing. It could be as simple as maybe thumb sucking, or it could be throwing objects. And sometimes the parent scolds the child, sometimes the parent hits the child, sometimes the parent ignores the child, and sometimes so anything can happen, right? And that is something that has to be addressed, I would say. If the parent has to, the parent has to have a strategy there. Like, I'm going to ignore unwanted behavior, because many times what happens is I'll have to go a little more into behavior, understanding of behavior. There
We
are
have
four
these
types of
meltdowns too of the child, the meltdown in public
yeah,
spaces sometimes.
yes.
Yes.
So there are four functions of behavior. That is something that we need to understand. A child may show behavior, not just a child, even we do that. We have only four functions of behavior. One is I want. It's a tangible. Okay, I want this, I want that, I want a chocolate, I want ice cream, or I want to go out, I want a car ride. That is a tangible reason. The second reason is I don't want, or the avoidance or escape behavior. I don't want to write, I don't want to read, I don't want to be with this particular uncle, or don't want this particular teacher. So that would be I don't want. And the third thing would be a sensory or automated behavior, which is I do certain things because I like doing it. Okay, for example, I was talking about thumb sucking. Now, why would I do thumb sucking? Because the moment I put my finger in my thumb, I'm kind of sucking my thumb. I need some oral inputs that it's a pleasurable for me. Okay, and I was also talking about children moving their fingers, or it could be rocking their body forth, back and forth. Right. So these are some behaviors which we see in children, which are most often called as self-stimulatory behaviors, and that is something more of sensory in nature. They do that because they're getting some sensory feedback. And the fourth thing is attention seeking. I do certain things because that gets me attention. So I am playing on my own. Nobody's caring about me. Nobody cares about that. And then I throw something, I break something. Everyone comes to me and says, "What happened?" Okay. Or somebody comes and smacks me. "Why did you break this?" Even that is a attention. That is a negative attention, but the child likes that. So children may do certain behaviors because they get the attention. And now we have to look at uh, is that a constructive task or a destructive task? We should not be giving attention for a destructive task. We should be giving attention to a constructive task, because child should understand that when I do things, right things, I will get the attention. When I do the wrong things, I will not get the attention. Of course, there will be some limits within that, because you cannot always ignore all the destructive activities. But by and large, we should avoid giving attention to destructive tasks. Now, when you talked about child with dyslexia and not cooperating or not wanting to do anything, now again I would go back to this activity, because this is very important according to me. Is maybe the challenge is too much? I don't even know two tables. You want me to do 7 tables and solve a problem, because that's what happens in dyslexia, right? The child may be in 5th standard, okay, but the child doesn't know even 2nd standard curriculum. Okay, so now so the challenge is too much. The child is not getting it. The child may not understand why I'm supposed to do. How is let's say, so if I also look at some concepts, like we talk about solar system, we talk about, now I have never seen a solar system, right? All of us imagine what is a solar system, what is universe, what are the different planets and all of that. Now that could be something which has to be it has to be experiential for the child to understand. You cannot just show a picture and expect the child. And sometimes when a child with intellectual disability, they don't even relate to that. So there are a lot of factors that are involved. And one rule of the thumb is, when a child is not interested in anything, I always leave the child, ignore it, and just talk to the parent. And especially that happens during the first initial interaction that we have. And I just keep observing the child, but I'll be talking to the parent to understand what are the concerns. And you will see the child, because children cannot be idle. They have to do something. So they will do something which is like, they may shake objects, they may throw, they may climb, they may jump, they may do anything. It may not be academic in nature, because we're talking about dyslexia or something. It may not be academic in nature, but they would be interested in something that they like to do. And most of the times they will do these things when nobody is watching them. Right? So that would be my first point of understanding the child. And what I would like then do is, I would always try to help them to get that through me. So it would be like, so I would either try to participate in that activity, or ensure that I will give it to them. Like for example, many children love bubbles. Okay, I blow bubbles. Right now, they may not be able to blow it, or they don't know how to do that, and so I blow them. Then that makes it interesting. Then I will wait for them to look at me. So only when they look at me, I blow. There's an eye contact that I'm developing without being obvious to them and telling them, look at me, eyes. Right? So we do all of that.
Yes. Yes. Yes, sir. So I have a very important question being asked by several parents, and especially if the parents have a special needs child, or a child that comes under the neurodivergent community. one of the parent escapes responsibility. As you earlier mentioned in the session, in between the session, that just charity begins at home first. And responsibility also begins at home first. Then you show responsibility towards your country. Rights and duties and rights, like we have the rights and duties and all of that. So we find certain parents or either one of the parent not being responsible at home, putting the burden of looking after a special needs child on one parent. And usually we have seen, according to statistics, that it is put on the shoulders of the mother. As she's given birth to the child, she takes over all that burden alone. So how would you empower a single parent? Nowadays, it could be either of the parents. Will not be gender biased. You're only saying it's the mother. It could, we've seen even fathers taking care of the children as a single parent. How would you empower them today in this session and tell them that, yes, we are here for you? Yes.
Yeah, that's a good point and a good question. So first thing is, when I talked about responsibility, I was talking about responsibility to teach responsibility to the children. However, this is a very valid question, and in my experience, as you had mentioned that we have seen more than 6,000 kids, and I do see there's a lot of the time it is the mother who comes to the sessions with the child, and it's not just the mother, it's almost like the maternal side is more involved than the paternal side. Okay, it's like my maternal grandmother coming, maternal grandfather coming, rather than the paternal grandmother or grandfather. So somewhere we do see the dichotomy there. And so one of the key things here is we are looking at the child as the future of the family, right? As the future of that particular household. Then what is important is that the child should be getting consistent instructions. It's almost like the mother is giving all the right kind of instructions, because the mother comes to the therapy center. The mother understands what is wrong with the child, or how the therapist has taught a particular strategy with the mother, and she wants to implement that at home. And now the father, who is not uh, part of the entire scheme of things, then he would take a totally different strategy, and that kind of nullifies everything, because now the child is crying, and I always tell them that when all this behavior starts, because uh, in fact we see that a child who has a very good intelligence, they have most of the behavior issues. Now it's not the child who has lesser intelligence. The child who has very good intelligence has the most of the behavior issues, because the child understands and starts manipulating people. Then he understands what are the dynamics that are happening at home. And now, for example, the child tries for a chocolate, and the mother tells the child that you do this, I get you this chocolate, and the child is continues crying. He doesn't do the task. Now the father comes and says he gets the chocolate to the child, and then now the entire plan has gone. It's gone for a toss. Now what? It's almost like somebody's teaching 2 into 3 is 6, and somebody else is saying now 2 into 3 is 8. Okay, so that's where things can go wrong. Now the child gets confused. He is not sure what needs to be done, or he will take the easiest route, because all of us like being in a comfort zone. All of us like things that goes in our way. We'll always prefer to have things our way. So the child starts hating the mother because she is not giving him what he wants, and maybe side with the father. And the father also thinks that because he goes to the office, he has so much of work pressure and all of that. The father thinks that he's not able to spend time, and many times also seen that there is a guilt feeling in the father. All of us know that maybe a 3-month-old child, a baby, who doesn't have head control. I mean, as a typically developing child, the mother knows how to lift and carry the baby. The father doesn't know. Okay, and that is something nobody teach. I mean, it is taught. Nobody naturally does that, right? Even the mother has to be taught how to hold the kids, the baby, and carry it. So it's all part of learning. And the father also has this guilt feeling that I'm not contributing. I don't know much about it. So the mother goes and goes to a therapy center, and she knows more about the child. The child is responding better to her than to me. I don't want to spoil the party. So sometimes it's also the guilt factor that I see in many fathers. Of course, there are also parents who both come to the centers, or the father is bringing the child. So it's also there, but majority of the time it is the mother and the maternal side that I've already mentioned. So key thing here is because it has to be a consistent instruction, and all the more reason that now we know that a child with special needs takes longer time to learn things. So, for example, if there was a study that was conducted, and they found that the IQ has a relationship with the repetition, number of repetitions. For example, somebody has a very good intelligence. You tell him only once, he will do it, or maybe two or three times. Then he learns exactly what needs to be done. You're teaching, for example, you're a math teacher and you're teaching him a concept. Exactly learns it, he does it. It's a person who has a lesser intelligence, okay, then you might need to teach them 5 times or 10 times, right? And then for a person, somebody who's further down on intelligence, they need more repetition. So as the IQ level comes down, the repetition has to increase. The number of opportunities, the experiences, the repetitions have to increase. Now, taking that into account, if I want a child to be independent in future, then I cannot start at the age of 5 years. I cannot start at the age of 10 years. I should be starting at the age of 2. I'll also give the example of teaching privacy. The child may not know why, but child knows what, right? So something similar to that, the parent has to spend more time with the child, and because now the mother also has her own set of issues. There could be health issues, or she is with the child throughout the day. Some children have so much of a behavior issue that they drive the parents nuts, and it could be very annoying at times as well. So mother also needs some space for herself. So the cure or the solution to this would be, I always talk about compartmentalization. Okay, I learned this from somebody, and so who talk about like all of us need some me time, and all of us have some responsibilities. I think if we have that clarity and we give some space for the mother where she could do things that she likes to do, because that is going to ensure that she is able to spend quality time with the child as well. Otherwise, she gets frustrated, and that frustration reflects on the child. She may not be able to tolerate some of the child's behavior. She may hit the child and things like that, and it also spoils the relationship between the husband and the wife. So all of this is important. So each member of the family has a responsibility towards the child, and the the more cohesive the unit is, it's better for the child, because everyone is speaking the same language. Everyone is when a child throws a tantrum, everyone is responding the same way. Okay, if the child is throwing a tantrum, crying, rolling on the floor, and as long as you know that the child is not getting hurt, he's creating a scene, but he's not hurting himself, then I would say we have to ignore the child. He'll stop after some time. There's nothing to worry. But if we intervene, if the mother decides to ignore, if the grandparent is like gets a chocolate to the child to stop him from doing that, then the child understands, okay, if I do this, I get the chocolate. So this behavior of this melting down, it could have started for a valid reason, but now it has become a behavior. Now he starts using this strategy for every time he wants to have a chocolate. So that's where it's important that every member in the house understands about the child's problem, first of all, and accepts it. That's very important. And then goes on to have a uniform way of dealing with the child, and everyone is uh, supporting the mother, because mother is the one who's spending most of the time, and because grandparents may not be able to come to the clinic, come to the school, and things like that. So mother will be the primary caregiver. So it's important that all of everyone rallies around the mother, gives her this time, gives her the support that is required, and wherever father possible, maybe on weekends the father can take the child more responsibility, take the child to the park, maybe to new environments, like so maybe to a beach or some swimming pool or things like that, to places like that. So all of that will ensure that the entire family, as well as and because the entire family is focused on that particular child, and the child's development decides everything in the family. It's a very and I always mention a happy child leads to a happy family. Right? Whenever you find that the child is not happy, the entire family is affected.
So thank you, sir, so much for answering to that question in a very beautiful way with lots of clarity. Much appreciated, sir.
Thank you.
Sir, we have a question like this. When you say interactive, the parent and the child, the parent should keep the child engaged with new activities, innovative activities, and it should be interactive. Now, the mother always, or the primary caregiver cannot always be with the child most of the time. And for how long the duration should be these activities which you suggested? What's the duration of time?
Yeah. So now the principal difference between a child with special needs and a typically developing child is that a child with who's typically developing would have two main things. One would that they would be self-engaged in meaningful activities. They will do things on their own, and they will be probably playing with a ball or reading a book or whatever it is, right? So they'll engage themselves. And number two is there is always a willingness to learn. You want the child to learn something. You get a new board game. The child would be eager to learn. Now, for a child with special needs, these are the two key areas that would be difficult for them. So we have some strategies where they could do that. So one of the strategies obviously is routine, which is like when you do consistently the same time, same day, then child learns how to do that, right? And that helps. And the second thing is the willingness to learn will also come based on the readiness of the child. Okay, so the child, there will be times when the child is sleepy, drowsy, right? That is not a good time for the child to learn certain things. Then there will be times where the child is much more focused, and every each one of us have our own kind of a rhythm. Some of us are, we talk about early goose. Some of us are like night owls, right? Those kind of things are also play a role in that. So I think we have to look at that as well. And um, now, engaging the child is not possible throughout the day, right? Because mother also has the primary caregiver also has other tasks to do. So every time we see that, every therapist will tell you, every doctor will, pediatrician or a pediatric neurologist will tell you have to keep the child engaged. Don't let him idle. An idle mind is devil's workshop. All of us know that, right? So everyone tells you that, but nobody tells how to keep the child engaged, right? That is the key part here. And we follow something called as the visual schedule. Visual schedule is a strategy which I think it's a different topic by itself, how it has to be done, where the focus is on teaching the child, because many times whatever happens is whatever teaching that is happening is we're teaching on the skill, right? I was giving the example of fixing a puzzle, catching a ball. These are all skills. Cutting with a scissor. These are all skills. The child learns the skills, but the child does not learn when to use those skills. Okay, I may be very good at something. So in other words, I always tell the parent, the child knows the answer, but he does not know the question.
Very
Okay,
true.
so so now what is important in that visual schedule? What we do is we teach the child exactly when you should do it. Okay, so there is a sequence that is involved. After this particular task, you have to do this. Okay, and in fact, we have a maid in the house who stays with us, and she is not literate. She doesn't know how to read time. And every day at let's say in the afternoon when my so daughter comes from school in the van, she'll come around 1 p.m. and she would know that 12:30 to 1 there is a serial. Once the serial gets over, she has to go and pick her up. Okay, so she relates to time in terms of some activity, and that is what we teach the child. In a visual schedule, you don't relate to time, you relate to activity. After this activity, you have to do that. So that way, we build it up over a period of time. So initially, it's just two activities together. Then you add one more to the existing. So now you have to have follow a sequence of three activities, then four, then five. So then the entire evening, then the entire afternoon, and then the entire day, right? So it builds up maybe 1 year or two, even 2 years, according to the severity of the child or the challenges faced by the parent. But the solution is the visual schedule ensures that the child knows that after I finish a particular task, I am not free. There's something else waiting for me. I have to do that. And that is where, over a period of time, the child learns how to do those tasks without the parent physical presence. Okay? And that is where then that frees the time for the parent. She can do something else, go for cooking, go for maybe some household chores, or even spend some time, quality time for herself. So a visual schedule helps the child to understand what is next, because most of the time we don't teach them that. They are more in the present. They live in the present. Somewhere saw in a video. It was too much for me, but the particular he was a psychiatrist, and he was talking about children with autism, children with hyperactivity. They have a 4-second life. The life is only for 4 seconds. They are too much in the present and now. Okay, and they don't see what is after this, and that is something that we have to teach them through visual stimulus.
Yes, sir. Perfect, sir. Thank you so much for answering to that question. You gave us a good clarity as to how to deal with it in case if parents found themselves in that situation. That's really nice. Much appreciated. Dear sir, we are really grateful that you've shared your time with us in spite of having a busy schedule. You've taken out some time for the International Fab Talks. Doing that, giving your time and sharing your expertise, sharing your professional skills, and enabling others to understand as to how they should deal with their life and their children, and empowering parents in the right way is really very great. And it hats off to you, sir, and a big thank you from our team to you, because many of them don't come forward and do this. They're very selfish, self-centered, like all to themselves. But we have several celebrities, unsung heroes, who are doing their best and sharing their knowledge and skills on the International Fab Talks. Thanks to each one of them. And to our special guest today, he is Mr. Karthik Rao from Chennai, sir. Did I get that right?
Yes.
Yes. Thank you very much, sir. Much appreciated. And you were even able to give clarity on the questions that were asked to you. Thank you for that wonderful PPT presentation as well. Looking forward to many more sessions, and I'm sure sir will join us, because we'd love to know more about sir's sessions. There are certain mantras that sir has based on empowering parents that in future we will get connected with sir and have a session with that, as well as aqua therapy and stroke rehab. Sir also specializes in stroke rehab, which is the need of the hour for many of us to know about it. So we'll thank sir for today and meet up soon in the next session. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I hope we are able to reach more parents. And as professionals, we are here to support each and every parent with special needs. And it's a partnership that I would always talk to my colleagues, that it's a partnership with parents. So we are partners in child development. So it's always we are there to support you, and whenever you have any challenges, you can please reach out to us, professionals like us, so that you understand that you're not all alone in this. And and it is also possible that sometimes the solution that we give to you may not work with your particular child, and that's where it's important to get back to us and say, we tried this, it didn't work, so what? So that's where the parents are pushing us to find a solution, and that's where we as professionals also grow as well, right? So thank you, Ms. Andrea, for inviting me. It was a wonderful experience for me as well, and I hope we are able to reach out to more and more parents in this with this journey. Thank you.
Yes. So I have one last question. In case after watching this episode, parents want to connect with you not only from Tamil Nadu, across India, how do they connect with you? What is the easiest way?
They can contact me on my mobile number. I have one mobile number, only one. So on WhatsApp, they can connect with me. So it's 98401-06608. I'll repeat it, 98401-06608. You can, I would encourage that they leave a message on WhatsApp so that I can call them back, and we can see how we can help them.
That's very true. And very nice of you for sharing your number and contact number. That is, the contact numbers out here. If you'd like to really take sir's services and avail the good things for your children. If you have a special needs child and you really want to see your child bloom, do connect with our special celebrity, is Mr. Karthik Rao. So thank you very much, sir. Looking forward to many more interactions with you on the International Fab Talks. Thank you so much for your time. Stay blessed.
Thank you very much.
My dear friends, with this, we come to an end to the International Fab Talks for today. Stay connected and stay tuned. And of course, stay blessed too.